Good evening. You're watching the Chucktown Wind Report. It is Sunday, January the 31st, about 8:40 p.m. Let's talk about winds and weather for the next couple of days as we get into the 1st of February. And what we're seeing right now is a spring-like pattern over the area with a subtropical jet stream riding up over our area right now. It's keeping the temperatures on the mild side. It's keeping some moisture in the atmosphere. So we're seeing some higher level clouding, some mid-level clouding with some interesting sunsets and halos and sundogs and some pretty neat things. This should be the pattern for the next couple of days as some of this clouding and troughing sticks around. What we have is very weak high pressure way out in the Atlantic. The center is way out to our northeast, and what it does is it creates this ridge axis from afar. When you have a boundary to the north and a boundary to the south, it sort of gets pinched in between these two, and so this ridge axis is formed, and then this ridge axis meanders up and down the coastline. So earlier this ridge axis was just along central to northern Georgia, and so our wind pattern was very weak. That was yesterday. Now today the wind pattern still stays on the weaker side, but the winds tend to turn more southwesterly above this axis and they stay more southeasterly below it. And so that's kind of the typical pattern of what we call subtropical ridging. That's what this effect is when you have ridge axis extending out in between, pinched in between two frontal boundaries, and then you get this very weak wind field in between with some clouding, some fog potentials, just sort of a weak overall pattern. And so we can't rule out a couple of stray showers here and there in the next couple of days, but what would look to be more of sunny skies now looks like it could be in and out sun with some mid to upper level higher clouding going on in the sky. So that's kind of what's going on with our system pattern. If we look at our jet stream setup now, here's the subtropical jet coming across from the Pacific and across the country and up over the southeast region. As we go into time here, we'll take a look at the next couple of days as this jet stream starts to take a dip across the middle of the country and then sweep across, and that's going to cause some severe thunderstorming to lift up across the Tennessee Valley from Alabama, Tennessee up into Kentucky as we get into Wednesday and Thursday. So you can see this very sharp dip in the jet stream. That's representative of very cold air dipping down into the central United States by, looks like Thursday early afternoon, and then we'll probably see some severe storming going on from Wednesday night into Thursday across this portion of the country. So if we look at the Schref plume viewer for our area, it looks like almost a 0% chance of rain, maybe a slight chance of rain as we get into Tuesday, with maybe one or two ensembles agreeing with just a trace amount of rain, and then also maybe a trace tomorrow, but that's just an association with some of that clouding. If we get some low-level clouding, that'll happen. But the chances really go up Wednesday when a frontal boundary develops from that dip in the jet stream and starts sweeping towards our coastline. So that's what we're going to be looking at. If we look at Datascope from weather flow, here's our winds for right now, and you can see very weak pattern. And typically what goes on is we see our sea surface temperatures along the coastline are pretty chilly, and we can take a look at it now. They've actually gone up to about 52 degrees, but you can see out here in the Gulf Stream where the temperatures are still warm, 77 to 80 degrees out here. That's the constant for the Gulf Stream. It's definitely warmer water out there, but cooler shelf waters along our coastline. And so right now we're sitting at about 52 degrees. If we look at the water level from the downtown Charleston, we can definitely see 51.8 degree Fahrenheit, and so this temperature probably fluctuates between 51 and 53 degrees on and off, with in and out tides, especially during the daytime when some of the marsh is warm and then the water goes in and then ebbs out, and so we get some warm water plumage going on. So the temperatures fluctuate between about 3 and 4 degrees total in the Charleston area. So that's kind of what's going on. Wind and observations. We see 5 knots in the harbor, 4 knots to Folly Beach, 4 knots to Isle of Palms. Not much gusting going on. Looks like this is going to be the pattern pretty much for the next couple of days. If we look at our forecast line, go ahead and blow this up just a little bit here. You can see pretty much daily, all the models are pretty much in agreement with at or below 10 knots. Even into Tuesday, where that wind starts to turn a little bit more southeast as that frontal boundary starts to come a little bit more towards the east coast. We have high pressure. I'll go back to this surface map. High pressure looks to become a little bit more robust here in the Atlantic, and so that's what's going to be driving in more of a southeasterly flow into our coastline as this low right here starts to drift along this undulating front. We get low pressures coming across the country, and then that's going to draw a frontal boundary towards the coast, and then we'll have some convergence going on, and that's pretty much what's going to happen there. So nothing until it looks like Wednesday, where the models are starting to pick up an increased southerly flow. So one thing to remember about this in the wintertime, especially with cooler shelf waters, is not to trust it so much, especially on the beaches, because you're going to get marine layering and decoupling to knock those winds down to probably at or below 10 knots, maybe even some fogging with this through morning and even into the afternoon, specifically to the barrier islands. Now, where the coastal breaks occur right here in the harbor, and go back to this map here. So if we have this cooler shelf water here along the coastline, that tends to decouple the winds and keeps the winds very light. But where this coastal break is, I'll zoom in just a little bit more into the area. So here's what we have. We have this coastal break, and when we have southerly winds funneling up in between these warmer masses back behind the land here where the warmer, drier air is, this is where you get some of that surface mixing that is able to escape from the marine layering occurrences and decoupling. So we end up with a pretty nice little wind right in this little area. So Wednesday we could see some higher winds gusting inside the harbor mouth and actually pushing inland as well. So we could see southwesterly winds really cranking up, especially along low-level jetting ahead of that cold front Wednesday and even into Thursday morning. So that's kind of what we're looking at. It's a little bit far away to tell right now, but just know that at least for tomorrow, Monday, and Tuesday, and even into Wednesday morning, winds are going to be pretty weak, fairly mild temperatures, probably in the low 60s, even if into the upper 50s along this cooler shelf waters. And that's kind of going to be the norm for the next couple of days. So that'll do it for the Chucktown Wind Report, and I'll be back on Tuesday to get caught up on what's going to occur for Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, and then we're probably going to get back into a winter pattern by next weekend. Until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.